Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 254. Today we are talking about those sleeper sites, the ones you don't realise would make great property developments, maybe a little bit smaller or just opportunities that are in your backyard that maybe you haven't noticed. And we're going to show you or teach you or tell you how to find them. Let's jump on into episode 254. Hello and welcome to episode 254. Now, today we're talking about those sites that you probably didn't even realise were really quite useful for property development. They are the sleeper sites. They are the ones that are already around you or you haven't thought of looking for, or maybe you have. So the more smaller, what you could do with the creative kind of property development sites. We're going to jump into that. So, Bob, before we do, take 5 as usual, but what's your tip?
Well, my tip is a little message popped up on my phone before, and apparently, unbeknownst to me, we're going to see a movie tonight. And I think the movie is The Devil Wears Prada. Is that the movie?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. And so somebody apparently used my credit card to book a movie. Am I going to like that movie?
Bob, you're going to love The Devil Wears Prada. I'd love for you to send a comment on our YouTube channel of what you think Bob will think of The Devil Wears Prada. But in my defence, it is the last night that it's available in the Deluxe Theater, so I wanted to go and see it so I can recline back and have that wee snipple of wine.
Oh, okay. So if I'm not enjoying it, I can have a little nap. No one will care. I could just recline a bit further.
Exactly. That's
not snore.
But what happens when I go to book something, it brings up like business credit card, your credit card, my business credit card, my personal credit card. I just get options and I go, that one. And it just happened to be yours.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Life's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Apparently the Devil Wears Prada is what I'm getting.
It is what you're getting. I think you're going to love it.
Okay.
We can come back to this one.
If anyone's seen it, tell me what you thought.
I think you might like it. I to be honest, I think you'll go to sleep. But anyways, I want to go see it and I'm sure you'll either sleep beside me or you will watch it. Bob, talking about, before we kick off, the book, Property Millionaires Exposed. This week's going to Linda Roberts. Linda, the book's in the post to you. Congratulations. Straight to page 121, as we always say. But I might get over everything. And remember, if you want a copy of my book, 3 Wines In, it is available on my website, hilarysaxton.com, or you can simply send me an email.
International award winner.
It actually won 2 book awards, that book.
Yeah.
So there you go. The other thing I want to mention before we kick into the topic is next week we've got our 5-day challenge, our 5-day property development challenge. If you want to register for that, it's free. It's in a closed Facebook group where every day at 10 a.m. Bob and I will be coming on live and we'll set up the challenge for that particular day. So it's not going to be huge leaps and bounds, but it will certainly start you with great momentum moving forward. And at the end of the 5 days, a map for you to move forward with. So if you want to register for that, there'll be a link below. Jump on in. And 10 a.m. every day for 30 minutes, and we'll have a bit of a Q&A if we've got enough time, so maybe we'll go a little bit longer. So that's every single day, and because it's in a Facebook group, you can always go back and re-watch it. So how cool will that be? If you want to jump in on that, then I suggest you register below and you'll be able to make it. Okay, Bob, let's talk about the sleeper sites, the ones, the nuggets that are around your streets, around where people are living. Do you want to unpack what I'm talking about and what you can do with them?
Okay, so we're talking about small projects here. A lot of our students, as we know, start off with duplexes because it's not too big a project. There's something to build, and that's fine. But there's a lot that's just a little bit under a duplex, and we're talking about small subdivisions. We're talking about little subdivisions and build, where we might do a small subby and build on it. We're talking about even building in the backyard, cutting off the backyard, corner blocks, battle axe blocks, those sorts of things. And even what we often call secondary dwellings, which, could be granny flats. Some people might refer to them in some circumstances. Or even, just a lot of people are sitting on land that they don't really realise has a higher potential. Mm. And that's what we're talking about, sussing those sorts of things out.
And to the average person looking for a site, do they seem obvious, or do they take looking for, or is it something that people wanting to do a development, mainly their first development, they don't think of?
Well, it could be because it's not the same all the way around Australia. So a lot of these things vary from council to council in terms of what you can do. And so it's really becoming familiar with what we often call a patch. And it could be where we live. We're talking about you don't have to go too far to find something like this. And it could be the property you're living in. It could be another property in your street. It could be a corner lot somewhere. It could be something in the next suburb or two that you may not be thinking about in terms of what you can do. And like I said, that even things like little subdivisions, how you do them, the size of the lots, that'll have a bit to do with the zoning and in the council, in the planning scheme. And so it is a localised thing. You need to become familiar with your own planning scheme in the area that you want to do a development, because it will vary from council to council, some of the rules.
What does it look like to somebody driving past? Because often a newer developer will drive around their patch, and that's not a bad thing to do because it just increases your confidence. We can't always picture things initially, so having a wee drive around isn't a bad idea. But it doesn't mean that you have to. If a lot of people will do their first development in another site. But what would it look like to somebody, that small site? Would they notice it?
Well, they might. We're talking about, let's go down to small subdivisions. So we're talking about a site, if you like, that's big enough. So if the minimum lot size in your council area was, let's say, 400 metres, and we wanted to find a subdivision, then we'd be looking for a site that's at least 800 metres. But then that could, in that same area, there could be a different zoning, maybe a zoning for townhouses where you could still just subdivide the land but into a much smaller lot. So one thing is lot size, the other thing is zoning. And like I said, that'll change with every council. And so what you're looking for when you're driving around, I guess, is land of sufficient size. And you might get really excited if you find something that's also a corner block.
Mm. So would you say that the first three things that you'd tick off would be size, zoning, and frontage?
Frontage as well, yeah, that's important. Because there will be, in each council, they'll have what I call a minimum lot size. So that will be, you can't subdivide lots smaller than this, and it could be 400, 300 metres, whatever it is. And there's often something else they might say, but can't have a frontage narrower than 9 metres or 7.5 metres or whatever it happens to be. So you're right, it'll be zoning, it'll be size, and frontage will have an impact. You can have a property that's the right size and the right zoning but doesn't have the frontage. A typical example would be a cul-de-sac block where the frontage might be 9 metres or less, and you can't get you just can't physically subdivide it and get the entries, the minimum entry widths and those sorts of things. So that'll all come into it. But you're right, frontage can be a deal killer in the respect that you can tick the other two boxes, but you need to tick three to even get excited.
We often talk about relaxations, and I spoke with one of our mentoring students last week, Jenny. Hey, Jenny, I hope you're listening. And she was looking at two sites to get next to each other, and she said that the council, there had been some relaxations she thought, or she was going to check for relaxations. Has there ever been, in your experience, a relaxation around frontage, or not really? Is it something they're quite strict on?
Well, it can, and in terms of strictness, depends on the council. I keep saying depends on the council, and it does. Hey, I did some townhouses in a city where those three things, the zoning was suitable for townhouses, 2-level townhouses, and that's what I wanted to do. So the zoning was okay. The size was under and the frontage was right on the money. So what this council said is, to do townhouses, you need 600 square metre lot minimum, a 15-metre frontage, and it had to be zoned whatever it was, LMR. And so the zoning was right. The frontage was 15, but it was 585 square metres, so it's under 600. But I got it through and got an approval because the planner and architect were able to satisfy all of council's requirements. So they're the three basic requirements, but it goes beyond that. There has to be turning circles for cars. There has to be a minimum amount of courtyard area. There has to be a minimum amount of landscaped area and private open space. There's a whole heap of other boxes to be ticked down the track. And we ticked all those boxes in spite of the fact that it was 585 square metres and not 600. So that was a relaxation that went through. And I've had plenty of relaxations over the years you won't get a relaxation on zoning, but that was a relaxation on site area. I've also seen in that same council relaxations on frontage. I saw a 14.85 metre width instead of the 15. So
it's not a huge difference.
It's not a lot, but when you're on a tight block and you're designing, it can be quite a lot. Like I did a 4 townhouse project, well-known one. It's a joint venture with my son Luke. It was a good size block. It was about 760 square metres, and to get 4 townhouses on, and in that council you could, but the narrow frontage meant that we had to cantilever the second level out over the driveway a bit. And so that's a situation where it was a long block but a narrower block. I would have rathered it be a bit shorter in depth and a little bit wider because it was really constrained from a design point of view, and that can be the problem with narrow block. That's why in that particular council area, the council set particular benchmarks because they say, well, if you go much below that, you're not going to be able to design properly. You're not going to be able to tick all the other boxes. So yeah, look, there's plenty of relaxations I've done, but that depends on the council too. Like if you try to get a relaxation on car parking, that's a toughie to try and get. It's not that I haven't gotten it. I did a project opposite a big Westfield once that had not only all the shops, there was a railway station 200 metres away and a bus interchange at Westfield. And so I got around that. The council was pretty friendly at the time because I said, well, look, people will buy these who don't need a car because if they can walk to every shop in the world across the road, they can hop on a bus and go everywhere, and they can go down the road and hop on a train and go everywhere. And I got a little bit of a relaxation, not much, but it was enough. It was one car space, but it just changed things a lot on a tight block. A little thing can mean a lot on design.
My gosh, my brain just went everywhere then because you brought up cantilevers. I mean, we're supposed to be talking about something else, but this gets really interesting. I haven't heard you use the word cantilever in so long, and obviously for most people, they know what it means. It's kind of like the balcony sticks out over, it's going to be sticking out further, of which on a tight space that makes sense because it gives you more space sort of in the air, and you can park underneath, etc., or drive underneath. But then you've brought up car parking and so many other things that your mind just goes, oh my goodness, I want to talk about all of that stuff. But I think I'm going to have to bring it back to when we're really, my head actually went to, was that Chermside? Was that that area that you did that townhouse block there?
It was around Mitchelton, one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but and Morningside,
my brain just,
that was in Brisbane.
I was just interested.
I guess why I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. The thing is, when you're doing small projects and you're talking about small lots, size is really critical. If you were doing I'll go to the other extreme. Say you're doing a 5 or a 2 hectare subdivision out in a rural area, like it doesn't matter. Like what's a few metres here and there. But the smaller you come down, the tighter the project, the smaller the project. Even millimetres are critical, things like turning circles into a garage and things like that. So that's sort of where I was heading on these little projects.
Got you. So with those little relaxations, when we're talking about these, we could call them, I've heard some people call them micro developments, which they maybe are. So we'll go back to, we've got a house perhaps on a site and there's enough room to do something else, and we've identified them. We've asked the 3 first questions before we move on to, digging deeper and going further into that. What do we sort of think how do we choose what goes on the back, whether we want to do a simple dwelling or something that's not permanent or something that is permanent, or like you said, a duplex or just another property, or do we subdivide it? Do we not subdivide and just put the house on? How do we make that choice?
Well, I guess what we've got to do is look at what the options are, because sometimes there's more than one option. But if we're going to do anything in the backyard, even if it's simply cutting off the backyard, then we have to have an entry off the street, and which means we have to have side access to the existing house. And unless we're going to demolish the house, I mean, there's another option, demolish the house and then subdivide into 2 lots. But you lose a lot of value when you demolish a house, unless it's like white ant ridden or something. So if we're talking about doing something in the backyard, whatever it is, whether it's a granny flat, whether we're subdividing off a lot, whether we're going to put a secondary dwelling or another, subdivide a lot off and build a house or a duplex or whatever, we have to have side access. And so that's important. So council will have a minimum width of access into the backyard block, we'll call it. Now, in some circumstances, you can actually shift a house sideways, probably something you might see more in Queensland, where some of the older houses are built up on stumps and they can be moved. Like it could be that you're a metre short on that side width to get into the backyard, but you could move the house a metre and still not infringe on the other boundary. But all of a sudden, there is an expense, obviously, in shifting a house a metre, but that would be a cost you'd put into your feasibility, and it might be worth it. And then that totally opens up the backyard. So it could be like that. I did one once where I bought half a metre off a neighbour, a strip. It made absolutely no difference to the neighbour, but it made a huge difference to me on what I could do with that side access. So it was almost like a realignment of boundaries, really, although it was technically a little subdivision. So just to get that width. So that's the first thing you look at. You have to be able to get into the backyard. And so once again, it's back to councils. For instance, there's one council where you can do, we call that a battle axe block or a hatchet block.
Oh, I've never heard it called hatchet.
Yeah. It's like think of a hatchet being like a small axe, I guess. Battle axe, meaning the entry is the handle and the head of the axe is the part in the backyard where it spreads out. Hatchet is like an axe, little axe. But yeah, both those terms are used in different parts of the country. But the thing is, like for instance, I'll give an example of one particular council. Yeah, there has to be a certain width to get down the side. In other words, that will be the entry of the back block. But when they're working out the minimum size of the block, they say, well, the minimum lot size in this area is 400 metres. But if you do a battle axe block, it has to be 600 metres because they don't count the handle of the axe. And so that comes into it. Other councils do count the axe handle as part of the size and the minimum size. So these are everything's back to what are the rules locally, because they do just vary around the country. And as you know from talking to some of our students, in some councils you could cut that back block off first into its own title. So you end up with the existing house on one lot, the new battle axe block, we'll call it, on the second lot. And then you could sell, if you wanted to, the house at the front, reduce your debt, and then build a new house on the battle axe. Whereas some councils make you build the house at the back first before you're allowed to subdivide it into 2 lots.
That just doesn't make sense to me. I know of students that's impacted, and I know of students who actually use this as their MO, as their way they're doing property development, and they've got a full system going, and they've actually just nailed it. It's what they do. They've got their own wee patch, and it's really working for them. But yeah, that kind of surprised me when he was telling me that has to be that way. I was like,
I guess like the council's being pretty conservative in respect. They really want to know what's going on that block, because it's a smaller block than what's average in that suburb. But then some councils, what they do when you subdivide that other lot, and say it's a relatively small lot, they make you put a house design with it. So part of the subdivision application isn't just like a surveyed lot showing lot 1, lot 2. You also have to have a design of a house on that lot that goes with the subdivision, because they then look at things like privacy, setbacks from boundaries and all sorts of things, turning circles on cars into garages. And so, yes, it is a a subdivision into 2 lots, but it's got this house plan that tags along with it. Or in some cases, it mightn't be a full detailed house design, but it's what you call a building envelope. So there'll be like an envelope, if you like, drawn on that lot, and within that envelope, you have to build a house. So same old story. I've said it 10 times. It does depend on the council, and that's why you need to know local rules. But all these things are good things as well. So, but yeah, back to your question. First thing you look at, well, can I get into the backyard? Is that entry wide enough? That's why I love corner lots.
Because you've got more than one option. You could have got 2 streets to choose from. Or I remember I was going to do a joint venture once with another member of our community, and he and I looked at a site in Newcastle, and it had a back street, remember, and we were going to use the back street as the entry to one side, and then the front street, the actual street, to the other side. But the site just went for telephone numbers. It ended up being an owner, someone who was going to build their like dream home, versus the development site, so they were prepared to pay numbers. But that's kind of a really good example for me. It could be a corner block, or just had a laneway.
Yeah, I've done ones with a lane at the back, or even 2 streets. I'm thinking of some streets where I don't know why it was ever subdivided this way. It was probably 100 years ago, but I'm thinking of some where it's 2 full streets. Like you're talking about a lane at the back, and I've done those ones with the lanes, and they're fantastic, but just 2 streets. I mean, they're so easy to subdivide. A lot of them have been subdivided over the years, but there's still some out there that, owned by an 80-year-old person who's been there, for 60 years or whatever, and they've never wanted to sell, and one day they will sell, or their kids will sell, or something will happen, they'll come on the market.
And I suppose that's the other thing I'm going to ask. Often the people selling these sites are the nan and pops, are the people that are in the house they've been in for years, and it's time, they want to move on. So if it's not for sale, how do we go about approaching them? Oh, I've sort of opened a different can of worms into a new podcast, but hey,
door knocking.
Yeah.
Well, you do find some of these houses that have never been developed are absolutely ripe to be developed. But you're right, there's people that have lived in there a lot of their life. I met an older lady once which I did approach her about the site. She was born in the house. Her parents had owned the house and had moved on. She inherited it, and she'd lived in it. Like, the house was over 100 years old. It stayed in the family for over 100 years. She had no intentions of selling, and I moved on. I could tell you something, that when either her children or grandchildren got that, more than likely they're just going to sell it. But and that's fine. I can understand that there's such a huge emotion. What about that? Just a quick story.
Yeah.
And you're probably thinking of the same one I am, where we looked at a site.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
What's that story?
Are you thinking about the one where
they didn't want to sell it to a developer?
Yes. Put the offer in, and it was actually a mentoring student, and they put an offer in on a site, and the jolly real estate agent, open mouth insert foot, said so that the people selling it were receiving 2 offers that day. One real estate agent put the offer in and said, these people want to buy this, and they just love this home and they really want to live here. And they were buying off an older couple, so they'd lived there forever. There was an emotional attachment to it. And the real estate agent that was with our mentoring student, I'm just like banging myself on the head as I say it, said, I've got this young guy who wants to develop it and
demolish your house.
He's going to demolish it and put up, beautiful duplex or something. And straight away, they just went with the other people because they didn't want to see their family home knocked over. And, oh, my goodness, that's emotional attachment, because what actually did happen is the people that bought it did it anyway. The real estate agent was just a little bit smarter. So I think you've really got to think about that, don't you?
Well, he did say that, they want to live in it. And they may have lived in it for one day just to not turn it into a lie. But that's right. Because they hadn't, like you said, they had an emotional attachment. They bought their kids, raised their kids in this house. It wasn't an old house. It was built around 1972. What's that, bit over 50 years old. So it was low set brick and tile. But it was a nothing house, but it really meant something to them that somebody else would come in and live in that house and maybe raise kids as well. Who knows? But yeah, that was a lesson learned from. What do you say?
You just got to be very careful. The other option as well is not everyone is emotionally attached. Maybe they're sick of it. Maybe they want to move on, but they don't know how. The idea of selling everything up and move, how does that even work? Selling something here, moving into a new market. So there are definitely opportunities in ways where everyone can be a winner. If it is an older couple, why doesn't everybody win? If you did like a joint venture with a landowner, and so they shared in the profit as well as made what the house would sell for. Heck, no one goes broke making money. If you're the developer and you're giving away some of the profit to get the deal over the line, wow, it just means you can move forward faster, because if they own it outright, that's going in as equity and happy days.
Yeah, exactly. So back to these small little sweet projects. Yeah, I did quite a few back in the 90s where I bought a lot of corner blocks, and they were in a 2-story townhouse zoning, and whatever corner block I could get, I grabbed. And what I did is, like you talked about before, there will be one road frontage that services the house, the entry to the house, but the backyard is on another street because they're on a corner, these properties. And so I just dropped duplexes in these. I could have knocked the house down and built a 4-pack, but it was actually more profitable to keep the house and then put it on its own separate title, like freehold fee simple title, not one lot of a strata plan like on a townhouse you might do, but its own fee simple title, and then build a duplex off the other frontage. And I happily did those for a few years, just grabbing them wherever I could in a good area. But corner blocks are great. I mean, there's less and less corner blocks that are undeveloped, but just like I said, sooner or later the people that haven't sold will sell, or their children will sell, or something will happen.
What's the biggest mistake you see people making when it comes to, looking for these opportunity style blocks?
Well, not so much looking for them, I guess, is getting the numbers right. Back to the same old story about feasibilities and getting your numbers right. And look, you'll look at a lot of potential 2-lot subdivisions where they just don't make enough profit. And often the reason for that is that the owner knows that it can be cut into 2 lots. But what they don't realise is it costs money to do that, and whoever does it needs to make a profit. So let's say in an area, 400-metre lots, I'll just keep it really simple, 400-metre lots are selling for $500,000. They've got an 800-metre lot. They think, well, this 800-metre lot could be 2 400-metre lots, and they sell for 500 each. So that's 2 of them is $1 million. I'll sell it for $1 million. Not realising that it might cost 100 or 120,000 or whatever it is to subdivide it, and then you've got to make some sort of profit. So you'll often see stuff like that, and it makes no sense to do that, because after you've subdivided, you're in the negative on the lots, But often you can make a small margin on the subdivision if you want to then take the next step and build on it. I've seen plenty of 2-lot subdivisions where the return on cost, margin on cost, if you've followed us, you'll know what that means, is you're looking for, like on a simple little 2-lot subby, you'd be happy with like 10% if you're just going to flip the land. But it's showing 3 and 4, 5%, and you think, well, that's not worth doing as a subdivision. But then when you do a feasibility and actually build a new house on it, it's showing like 15 or 16% return on cost, which is fine for that sort of project, which means that it might not work as a small subdivision, but it would work if you build a house on the lots that you create. And one of the great things about that is that you could, if you wanted to, you could build one house on, like you have to do the 2-lot subdivision, build on one lot, sell it, and then roll your profit in and build on the second lot. If you had enough money, you could build both houses at the same time, which is the preference. But otherwise, if you built them one at a time, then you can do that project with less money.
And that's what I was just going to explain for you listening who are new, that's the benefit when Bob said roll the money in. What it means is you got less finance costs. And remember, finance is a good thing. We always want to leverage other people's money, but it just takes the pressure off on that second one. And that would it speed things up much?
Oh, well, I mean, it's quick. It's quicker to do the two houses if you had the equity to finance the two houses at the same time. I'd do it. But if you're a bit short on equity and you could do them one at a time, then that's fine, because the thing is, you're not borrowing for the second house. The cost of doing the two-lot subdivision remains the same, but you're only building one house, not two. Say that obviously you don't need as much money to build one. Then you could sell it and then roll your profit and your equity, if you wanted to, back into that second one, borrow way less money and then do it that way. So that's just flexibility, which is great. If you're doing, like, say, 3 townhouses, then you have to build 3. You can't build them one at a time and keep selling them. So you build 3, sell 3. So that's why those little subdivisions, and if you're building on the subdivision, like I said, the subdivision itself mightn't make enough money as a standalone project, but when combined with building something, it does work.
Or even if you wanted to just build one and flick the other one off as a side, there are quite a few options there, aren't there? Really,
in our little subdivision course, I think there's something like 11. I came up with 11 options for doing exactly that.
That's right. We made like the subdivision course that runs alongside the Property Mastermind course. Too true, too true. Well, Bob, I think we can wrap this one up. We sort of unpack that there are plenty of opportunities, and it's often older couples that have got them, or somebody who just luckily bought something and maybe zoning's changed and so they can cut something up. Or so you might already own that, which would be cool. But if you're interested in learning about property development, well, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have a chat with you. And remember, we've got our 5-day property development challenge coming up next week. So this podcast, believe it or not, comes out tomorrow or the next day. We record it Wednesday. It's out Friday. So that's exciting. You'll be able to have just enough time to register for Monday. Failing that, we will see you next week at episode 255. All right. Catch you later.
Bye now.
Bye.